Set your e-brake. Put something behind the rear tire. Lift it. We're supposed to. Now we're going to take off the wheel. Once we're in here, you need to take off this 12mm bolt, and there's going to be another one right here. I already took this one out. The bottom of the caliper, it's a 12mm too. This guide pin was seized. They're seized inside this bracket, but that's why I've got to change all this. So that is a discussion we will go over. So take out these 12mm bolts, and this isn't going to be exactly how yours works, but you get an idea. And then your caliper comes out and your brake pads are going to be right there. So set your caliper to the side. And if you have to change your rotors, now you're going to use a 15mm to get these bolts out right here. This one, and there should be another one right there. I don't have it in, but 15mm bolts to pull this bracket out. With the bracket off, your rotors should just slide off. Sometimes you have to beat them off, but there you go. So the first step is just to slide another rotor on, but you got to clean this, and I'll show you. All your rotors should come wrapped in plastic. And the reason is they rust really easy, and they have some type of oil rust prevention whatnot. So you have to get it off. And I mean, you have to get all of it off on this surface. The rest of it you ain't gonna worry about. It's just this surface and the other side. So all that stuff right there needs to be completely wiped clean. And I take my time with this. Spend, 2-3 minutes just getting all this perfect. Because the cleaner, the more perfect you get this assembled back together, the longer your brakes are gonna last. Because the pads actually transfer what they're made of, whether it be semi-metallic, organic, ceramic, onto this rotor. And that is the friction that stops the car. So the cleaner it is, the better the transfer, and the longer your brakes are going to last. So get it nice and clean, and then we'll put this on and we'll clean the other side. Okay, so there we go. Time to clean the other side now. And you don't want any fingerprints on this or anything. You don't want dirt, grime, nothing. You want this to be super clean. And once again, you really only have to worry about the surface where the brake pads are going to touch. So get it cleaned up. Okay. This is a new bracket. New caliper bracket, old caliper bracket. If you notice, these are holes, and that is a bolt that's stuck in. What happened is who owned this car beforehand did not lube this guide pin. If these guide pins don't get lubed, they seize in there like that, and you have to buy a new bracket. And brackets aren't always available. So this is your guide pin. They go in like so. They need to be lubed. That's called synthetic brake lube. Got some around here somewhere. This stuff came with the bracket. Okay, so this is an old guide pin. The new guide pins at AutoZone are H15051. There you go. And then you're gonna need a hardware kit too, because you need the dust boot. Hardware is H5841. Okay, so here's your pin with your rubber boot. The boot needs to look like this one. So the Boot needs to come all the way up. Let's see if I can do it with one hand. There we go. Both of them are like that. The boots are all the way up. So now we need to put lubrication on this. The trick is to not put it on the tip, only put it on the side. If you put too much, this won't go all the way in. So let's assume for a second you put too much on it. What happens is this goes in and it'll stop right there. It'll stop with a little bit of room and it won't go anymore. If that's the case, just pull this out. I mean, you could just put a pig down in there and pull some of the lube out, but what you can do is just wipe whatever's on the tip off. Just wipe off the tip and then just repeatedly do that until this goes in. So we need to lube these up and get them in. There we go. We can work on the other one for now. See, I just dropped that and got a little bit of grime on there. Take your time and wipe it off. You only have to do this once for a long time, so get that stuff off. You don't want anything on there. Yeah, I got a bunch on here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wipe this off completely, put more lube on it. You need it to be right. Okay, all cleaned up. More lube on there. We just wanna take it slow. Now this boot needs to come over this lip. Same with this one. This one's going to be a little more difficult because it's new. There we go. Okay, so you have sealed guide pins. When I put the bracket back on, I like putting a lug nut all the way on to hold this, sometimes two, just to keep it all perfectly in place. Okay, so now the rotor's held in place, and when I put this bracket on, I can do it much more easily without touching it. Remember, you don't want to touch this surface at all. So I'm going to get this bracket back on. Awesome, so here we go. Clean surface, bracket, and with this lug nut on, you can see that the gaps are basically how they should be. So here's how it really works. Why you need to lube those things. It's a common misconception, and I say common because I spent many years around this stuff, and my father is the one who taught me this. He wasn't very good at working on cars. I learned from his blundery. These pins allow the caliper to move back and forth. When you push on the brake, this slides towards the center of the car. Just a little bit, but it needs to release. It needs to come back out. If those pins get stuck, that's where your grinding comes from, because it stays towards the center of the car. So this caliper actually moves. It is not stationary. Okay, we need to push this piston back in. The best way to do this is to release this bleeder screw. Release the bleeder screw and then push your piston back in. I think this one's already released. Yeah, this brake system has a lot of issues, so I have a feeling I'm going to be doing a lot more to it. But a lot of the times when that's released, you can just push on it with your hand. Not this one. So it might be seized. So what we do next, I'll show you. Yeah, this caliper's seized. So what you can still do though, put an old brake pad on it, and then you can get some this caliper is definitely seized. So if it wasn't, what you can do is you can take the old brake pad. As you can tell, this one is going to be the outer one. So anyways, it doesn't really matter. So put this up against your piston. You don't want to crack your piston. And then just get some channel lockers, some huge pliers, and squeeze them together. They do make tools too that you can just push this back in, but this one's seized, so I gotta go get a new caliper now. To swap out the caliper, all we have to do is change this out, but you have to make sure your copper washers are correct. So when you go get a new caliper, they should come with copper washers. If not, ask them why it doesn't come with them. It really needs them. So just to make sure, when you take this off, keep the 2 copper washers. You're not supposed to reuse them. You're supposed to use new ones. But still, just in case you're in a jam, make sure you save the copper washers. So 10 millimeter, get that off. So this is the new caliper. Your part number at AutoZone is C391 for passenger side and C390 for the driver side. So I like installing this before I actually put it in the car. This is your hardware kit, whichever. Let me get it out. So how you put this in, if you notice, this side's short and this side's long, and then you have this little tang lip thing. What you do is, here's the piston, the long sides go towards the piston, but you put the short side in first. Set it down like that, slide that through the hole. The short side, you don't want to put much pressure on this, not much at all. This is very thin metal, so your little short side's on the opposite, see? So it goes through the hole, and then you just want to gently push down on this so it goes forward, and then this needs to go over that. So gently push down. There you go. It does not take much pressure. You do not want to mess this up. If you mess this up, go get another one. Very seriously. These 2 surfaces right here are what the brake pads slide on. And if this is messed up, the brake pads aren't going to slide. And then you get issues. I put this on last just to make sure it's proper. You can set it on 2 different ways. You need to make sure it's the correct way. So what you want to do first, take a clean brake pad. Don't touch this surface. Do not touch this surface. That's why they wrap them in plastic these days. Too many people are touching them. You want to put that there. You want to take your old shim. This is called a shim. This one goes on the inside by the piston, and you can see that circle right there? That's the piston. So you're going to take a brake pad, and then you want to attach the shim to it. So we'll see if I can do it this way. Put it in and then put the shim on. It's hard to do one-handed. This shim's a little messed up, so put the shim on it. I'm gonna have to bend this shim a little bit to get it to hold, but yeah, give me a second. Okay, so shim's on. The only time you do not want to use a shim is whenever the shims are built in. Some brake pads have the shims built in. Notice, still clean, I didn't touch that. Wagner, for example, the thermoquiets, those have built-in shims and you don't need them. So next, we need to put the caliper on. There's a few things you need to keep an eye out for. Number one, this bleeder valve needs to be up. See how it's up? If it's down, that means you have the driver's side over here, or just a completely wrong caliper. When you put this in, Your guide pins are going to need to slip in a little bit. But what I want to show you next, if you notice on your guide pins, you have flat surfaces. You have flat surfaces. And that, your flat surface goes against the flat surface of the caliper right here. So you just kind of rotate them a little bit so that they slide in. I have to use two hands. The reason I have to use two hands is the springs on top of the brake pads, they're kind of holding the caliper out. So we're going to use our bolts for our guide pins, stick it through here, and then bolt it up. Okay, everything's bolted up. Our shim is where it should be. Our pad's where it should be. If you notice, there's a drip of brake fluid. That's bad. So we're going to have to clean it. There's no other fingerprints anywhere, but I still want to clean that off again. We need to get this hooked up. There's going to be a copper washer on that side and a copper washer on that side. What we need to do is clean this. Make sure all that gunky stuff right around here and on the opposite side is gone. So I'm going to wipe that off real quick and then we'll bolt it in. Okay, it's all cleaned up. As you can see, that's my copper washer on the one side. Now I'm going to take this copper washer, I'm going to put it on that side, and I'm going to bolt it in like that. So I got to add that copper washer and then bolt it in. There we go. So we need to clean this up. Your line is connected. Once again, copper washer on the outside, copper washer on the inside. Everything's good to go, except we definitely need to clean that. And then I just like cleaning it all around. It needs to be as perfect as possible. So Okay, first thing you want to do is make sure your master cylinder is full. That guy right there. So fill it up, and then I'll show you how to bleed this thing. Here's your bleeder screw. Once again, needs to be on top. If it's on this side, once again, you have the driver's side over here, or just the completely wrong caliper. Open this up. This is a style of bleeding called gravity bleeding. The brake fluid is going to be coming down this line, filling this reservoir just by gravity, and the master cylinder cap needs to be off right now. So take the master cylinder cap off. Fluid's going to be filling up this reservoir slowly and then coming out this. So, quicker way to do this. Take a hose, put it on here. I got 2 feet of just vacuum line. Suck on it. And should anything get in your mouth, you want to spit, not swallow. Okay, so I can't get fluid out, which means we probably have a clogged line. Time to figure out where. Okay, so we got to replace the line. What we're going to need to do, the very first thing you do, is we're going to have to replace, or we're going to have to disconnect this steel line right here. And this is something you typically need a line wrench for. It's a 13mm line wrench, but this is just an open-ended wrench or combo wrench, whatever you want to call it. You don't want to force this, you don't want to strip this, so pay very close attention. You typically want to tighten it a little bit. Just try and tighten it, try and loosen it, try and tighten it, try and loosen it, try and tighten it, try and loosen it. There's very few people that do that. Most people just try and loosen it. And as you can tell, I used this and I got it loose. So that does work. And you're supposed to do that with your bleeder screws. Like these bleeder screws, when they're old, do the same thing. Don't just try and loosen them. And a lot of times you have to torch them off, whatever. Spend your time with them and they will come loose. But like I said, tighten it first. It's all that rust and whatnot that you're just breaking loose. Okay, there we go. And as you saw that drip, that's good. I'd be willing to bet there's a, inside this line, this is rubber on the inside too. So inside, there might just be a little flap, just So that's a good way to put it. So when the brake pressure's coming down this, there's a little flap that closes, and it doesn't allow the pressure to come through. And that would explain why whenever I suck on it, that flap closes, not allowing brake fluid to come through. So gotta get this replaced. So let's figure out what size that is. Maybe it's a 10. Give me a sec. It was a 10 millimeter. The bolt that was right there. That's it. Take that one out. We got that one out. We got that one out. And now it looks as though we got to take that one out. Yeah, that's a 10 millimeter. So let's get this one out. And once again, sometimes you have to tighten it, loosen it, and tighten it and loosen it. So let's get this one out next. This is the new brake line. It's not installed yet. It's just sitting there. You want to connect your metal line first. One thing I'd like you to notice, see how it's dripping right there? That's what I wanted it to do out the caliper bleeder screw whenever I was sucking on that hose, but I couldn't get it to do it. That right there shows that fluid movement is free, and I really like how it's clear too. That is awesome. So that right there proves that the old rubber hose had a problem, and that was the problem. So I'll show you how it should drip out the bleeder screw in the next scene, or one of the next scenes. So we need to connect this line first, this bolt second, this bolt third, caliper last. Okay, the line's installed. You want to make sure that your master cylinder is full. Okay, so our line's in, everything's tight, secured. We used our 2 copper washers, the 2 new copper washers, and when we release the bleeder screw, nothing happens. But we're going to go back to our trick of sucking on it. So technically it's not bled. I mean, it's dripping, but technically it's not bled. You do want to have 2 people on it, or pressure bleeder, or the correct way, but it's just me. I don't have all those expensive tools. That'll kind of get it done. Whenever somebody else shows up, we'll proceed. But back to the overall scheme of things. We're gonna close the bleeder valve. We are going to clean this again with our brake fluid cleaner. Wipe it down. We need to clean the back side too. I'm going to wipe it down, and then I'm going to press on the pedal inside the car so that these brake pads get locked onto this rotor. Right now, if I take this lug nut off, then this is going to get wonky and weird and wobbly. You want to hop in the car and push on the brake pedal after this is clean and whatnot to lock this in, and then we can put the wheel on and we're good to go.